ranger. I'm employed, really not even employed, I'm a service member through AmeriCorps. So that's really kind of the background that I have going in. As far as training and responsibilities, everything like that goes, it's the exact same as a park ranger. It's just that at the end of the day, my directs are a little more outside of the park. But my background's a little different as well. I'm not really background in education or anthropology, geology, archaeology, kind of the big ologies that we have in Mesa Verde. My background's a little more cultural, so that's kind of the approach that I have with it. My main focus is the people who lived here, people who came afterwards, and everything kind of in between. So we will still talk about a lot of the sciences there. However, if you are looking for a deep dive in some of those subjects, just let me know if I'm not answering the questions as deep as you'd like me to go. I could always help you find another resource beyond me. But as far as our trail is going to go, we're going to continue straight through here. We're going to have a quick little second in this space, continue to the stairs. We're going to climb down some metal steps. It's going to be about 100 feet decline down into the rim of the canyon. We're going to walk along the rim on a paved trail, and we're going to end up at our first ladder. So we're going to climb 5 ladders total. Only really 2 of them are of note, but the first one is 32 feet tall. We're going to have basically the climb into the ladder, or into the dwelling space through that ladder. It's about 6 feet wide as well, so you'll be able to climb 2 by 2. As we continue into that space, we'll start going through the actual dwellings. In those spaces, there's going to be a couple of narrow squeezes that we'll be on, so that's also something to consider as well. We're going to be pretty much squeezing through some narrow spaces where you're going to have to duck at some points, and at the very end, we're going to have a 12-foot tunnel that we'll all crawl through. In that space, you can stand up in the middle of the tunnel. It's about 4 feet in and then 4 feet out, so you're not crawling through the entire thing, but that is going to be a bit of a confined space as we go through. So if you're not very great with heights, or if you do not like enclosed spaces, this is definitely something to consider before we go on the tour here. Beyond that, while we're down there, just keep drinking water and listen to your bodies. It's really going to be the biggest thing as we go. Watch your step, especially. In a lot of spaces here, we're going to have some sharp drops, so make sure you're not walking backwards in these spaces. Keep a good eye where your feet are going to be. And then keep drinking water. It's a really big part of, just the experience out here alone, and not even on these tours. You want to make sure that you're hydrated, especially at this elevation. You do lose hydration a lot quicker. So make sure that you're drinking water throughout your trip here. You can continue drinking water while down there, but if you have any snacks or sugary drinks, just keep those in your packs. Other than that, while we're down there, we are going to be visiting an active part of descent communities and an active part of the Park Service. So I just ask that you visit with respect. Make sure that we're not touching the walls, leaning against any of the walls. That includes the large balcony wall as well. Just as little contact as possible. Even small little contact points can leave behind marks on them. We'll kind of see those as we go through. But if it is a situation where you start to feel dizzy, short of breath, anything like that, and those walls are the only thing saving you from a bad fall, definitely reach out for those. Those are there for you. But yeah, really, that's the biggest thing. Listen to your bodies. Make sure we don't fall. Make sure we don't pass out, especially. And then visit with respect. Those are kind of the 3 big rules. So with that in mind, we're going to get started here in just a second. If you wanted to ask me any questions on the side regarding safety, I'll be off to the side here. If you want to start drinking water, or if you have any concerns with your group, bring that up now and we'll get started here in just a second. And I'll start counting tickets in a moment here at the gate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's really going to be the biggest thing. When we discuss these cliffside dwellings, they're probably the biggest thing people come to visit, and probably the biggest thing that still remains at the time that people were living here. But the history of this space is much, much wider beyond that point. As far as human history, it goes back about 14,000 years on this continent alone, and then 1,400 years is when we first started seeing permanent homes being built on the Mesa top. So pretty much all living happened up here. This is where people were making their first homes, where people continued to live for about 600 years. This is where all the farms were. This is where all life was happening. The spaces that we go down into, the alcoves, were built in the last 100 years of history. So there's a really big question as to why. Probably our biggest understanding is that there was a lot of scarcity of water up top after a drought. So they needed to move closer to the water sources. And we'll kind of talk about why that would be the case for them to move into those alcove spaces. But there's a lot of history that we'll glance over. We already just glanced over 600 years. We'll still be talking about a little bit of that as we go through, but that's really the biggest thing to understand, is that we're not going to really get the whole scope in this 1 hour. We're going to get a very good understanding of some of the cultural aspects of things, but there's a lot more to learn. So I highly recommend, if you haven't already, going through the Mesa Top Loop or seeing Far View. There's a lot of things that kind of piece together. Mesa Verde as a whole isn't even one story. It's one part of a larger story outside of that. So as often as you can, if you wanted to learn a little more about this, we have spaces like Canyon of the Ancients, we have Chimney Rock, a lot of different spaces around here that will also contribute to the story as a whole. But with that in mind, we'll continue through, and really just keep that on your mind, is that when people were living up top, they were living up here for a very, very long time. 600 years of history was happening up here. We only have about 250 years of American history when we consider the country. So if we continue through, we'll have that on our minds and consider just that movement of going from up top down below here. Before we do, does anybody have any questions? Alrighty. One cool little thing as we talk about the migration of people, when they were first just kind of migrating through the area, probably the biggest thing was piñon nuts. So right now we have a lot that are in season and fruiting. So you'll see these on the ground. They're actually one of the biggest things in the park that you can collect. So you can collect up to 5 pounds of these. You'd be very lucky to get even 1 pound of these, but I'll have you guys pass that around. You can see inside there's a lot of these little nuts inside. They're very bitter on their own. You want to probably roast them before you have anything else. But they have a lot of sap on them. Very high in calorie, so it's definitely a big commodity of what people would be looking for.
Huh. What crops did they grow up here?
So corn, squash, and beans are the big ones, as far as what they were propagating.
Was this all part of the Ute area? Or
A little later on.
Later on,
yeah.
okay.
So this was Ute land.
Okay.
As, we get into the history of the park. So as you were coming through, driving from Cliff Palace to over here, you actually drive through the Ute Tribal Park. There's a part of the the Park Service that didn't quite get the road.
Nice. Okay.
As I mentioned before, I'm not a geologist, but I'm going to do my best. So, when we're talking about this space itself, really the biggest important factor of Mesa Verde and in the story of Mesa Verde and how we talk about it now, it all relates back to water. Water is really the biggest aspect of all parts of this space. So, the space itself is called Mesa Verde. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's actually a cuesta. it is rain most of the time, but it's not a flat mesa-like formation. So Questus have a bit of an angle at the very top point where the Farview Lodge is and where the Park Point is, everything like that. That's the highest point in the park. You're pretty much at the same elevation now as you are when you enter the park. So there's actually a big decline as you climb from there downward. You can really just throw your car into neutral and drift all the way down. But with that, there's a lot of water runoff when it rains out here. Sandstone above our heads is an incredibly porous rock. So a lot of that water comes down this way and it begins to collect in the rock. And it gets heavier and heavier until it starts to push down and then hits another layer of sediment. We can see some of that layer down here. This isn't quite the entire layer, but there is a little bit of a break here. So once it hits that layer, it can't pass through. And that water has really only a couple of choices. It either needs to settle in the rock itself or it needs to start moving outward. So as it starts to move and collects and push outward from that layer, it begins to freeze, it begins to thaw. There's a lot of movement over several hundred years, and it begins to chip away at a lot of these rock faces. So that's what forms a lot of these smaller alcoves. But then when we jump back 100 million years or so, we have an ocean that's receding. And a lot of that is what formed the greater alcoves that we have. So some of what we have in Balcony House will pretty much be walking on bedrock, what you'd see at the bottom of the ocean. So that's one real big thing to consider, is that water, well before people were living here, is a very big part of the story as well. And that's really what forms a lot of these alcove spaces. You can see almost as if we have a large belt as we continue on, looking at a lot of the landscape itself. But at least a good understanding as we go. But we'll see why that relates to the people as we go. I encourage you, if you wanted some shade, you can get under the alcove space. Just wash your heads if you fall. Alrighty. So, as I mentioned, that water is moving out, and that's what causes a lot of the erosion that forms a lot of these alcove spaces. You can see some of that at work right here. So we have a lot of moisture underneath this kind of layer of rock, and we have the rock fall happening right here. So that water is pushing out now, and then we can see the result of that here. This is a seep spring. So we even have a lot of moisture from the last couple of days where we're getting some drip on it. This is pretty active. It's very shallow when it's not very rainy, and when we get a lot more rain, it starts to push out. This when I first started here about 3 months ago, there was only a little bit of water here and there, and it wasn't really too much of note. It definitely wasn't enough, at least for maybe even more than 5 people. But now it's pretty decently grown from then, and it's pushed out even past where the cistern that was created, and now we're getting some moisture even outside of that. So these spaces, as that water is moved, it finds the path of least resistance, and it creates basically a channel. When it rains out here, even 20 minutes of rain can cause this to be more active. So the rainfall is a really big part of water here. It was a big part of water when people were living up top as well. They had different methods of collecting water, like cisterns and reservoirs and check dams for their agriculture. It was a big part of controlling what you can in the landscape while being kind of a part of the landscape as well. is a really big part of what these people were looking for. So with that in mind, as we continue through here, that's one thing to consider too, is these are chipping away and breaking, and there's a lot more rockfall. That's all sandstone as well. That's where the break in the homes comes from. So again, water is really all aspects of life, even when we consider the earth that people are using to live with, it's all coming from water, the movement of water. With that in mind, we're going to continue up here and we're going to start climbing that ladder. So with that, I just recommend having 3 points of contact. I don't recommend taking pictures or anything while you're on the ladder. But keep 3 points as you're moving up. Go at your own pace. That's really the biggest thing. Don't feel rushed. We have plenty of time. If you feel like you might be a little slower, you might want to wait towards the end. But I don't recommend stopping. Just keep looking up and keep moving. It's really the biggest thing. Another note too is that we are doing some stabilization work on the ladders. They are completely stable to walk through. It's really just the coating that's on them. They used to have a white paint that made it really, really hot when you grabbed onto it. It was really creating a... So, it created a lot more insulation for that heat. Got really hot. They're working on that now, so they're sanding away at it. There's going to be a couple spots that still have that, and it's going to be a little hotter, but makes it easier to keep moving. So I'm going to climb first. I'll meet you guys up there, and we'll just continue into the next plaza over. This is going to be the lower plaza that we're entering. And then whoever's last, if you don't mind just closing the gate behind you. They got all the white paint.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, wow.
Come on. Oh, that's Ready to go.